Did you know the King of Rock and Roll won all 3 of his competitive Grammy Awards for gospel music? Seriously, not a single one for rock and roll. Gospel wasn't just a side project for Elvis Presley. It was the music he grew up on, the music he loved most, and the music he returned to throughout his entire legendary career. He'd often unwind after concerts by gathering friends and his backup singers for hours-long gospel jam sessions, singing the hymns that touched his soul. Number 7. Take My Hand, Precious Lord. This song holds a profoundly deep and personal connection for Elvis Presley. It wasn't just another track on an album. It was a piece of music intertwined with heartbreak and solace. The song itself was penned by Thomas A. Dorsey in 1932. Dorsey, often called the father of black gospel music, wrote it in a moment of unimaginable grief following the death of his wife Nettie Harper during childbirth and the subsequent death of their infant son just a day later. He was devastated, questioning his faith when he sat down at the piano and the words and melody for "Take My Hand, Precious Lord" came to him, offering a lifeline of spiritual comfort. It quickly became one of the most beloved and enduring hymns in the gospel repertoire, a source of strength for countless people facing hardship. Elvis Presley knew this song well. It was a standard in the Southern churches he attended as a child in Tupelo, Mississippi, and later in Memphis, Tennessee. The raw emotion and plea for divine guidance resonated deeply with his own spiritual upbringing. But the song took on an even greater significance in August 1958. Elvis was stationed in Germany with the U.S. Army when he received the devastating news that his beloved mother, Gladys Presley, had passed away suddenly back in Memphis. Gladys was the center of Elvis's world, his confidant and biggest supporter. Her death shattered him. At Gladys's funeral held at the Memphis Funeral Home, a heartbroken Elvis specifically requested that "Take My Hand, Precious Lord" be sung. He asked one of his favorite gospel groups, the Blackwood Brothers, who were close friends, to perform the hymn. James Blackwood, the lead singer, later recounted the emotional weight of that performance, singing Dorsey's words of seeking comfort and guidance while looking at Elvis, who was overcome with grief. It was a moment where the song's message of leaning on a higher power during times of unbearable sorrow was intensely real and personal for the young superstar. Years later, Elvis would record his own version of the song. He included it on his second gospel album, His Hand in Mine, released in November 1960. The recording session took place on October 30th, 1960, at RCA Studio B in Nashville, a space that would become legendary for countless country and rock hits, but also served as the sanctuary where Elvis laid down many of his most cherished gospel tracks. Surrounded by his trusted musicians, including guitarist Scotty Moore, drummer DJ Fontana, though Buddy Harman played drums on this session, pianist Floyd Kramer, and the indispensable backing vocals of the Jordanaires, Elvis poured his own experiences and emotions into the performance. His rendition is marked by its sincerity and restraint. It's not flashy. It's deeply reverent. You can hear the echo of his own loss and his enduring faith in his voice. The arrangement is simple, letting the powerful lyrics and Elvis's earnest delivery take center stage. The Jordanaires provide their signature, smooth harmonies, creating a comforting, sonic backdrop. It stands as a testament to the song's enduring power and its specific, poignant meaning in the life of Elvis Presley. It wasn't just a cover, it was a hymn that had personally walked with him through his darkest hour, a musical prayer captured on tape. Whenever he sang it, live or in the studio, there was an undeniable sense of personal connection, a shared understanding of sorrow and the search for divine comfort. Number 6. Swing Down, Sweet Chariot. Get ready for some foot stomping, hand-clapping energy. Swing Down, Sweet Chariot showcases a completely different side of Elvis's gospel stylings compared to the solemnity of Take My Hand, Precious Lord. This track is pure, unadulterated joy and exuberance, deeply rooted in the black gospel quartet tradition that Elvis so admired. The song itself is a traditional spiritual, its origins stretching back into the 19th century, part of the rich tapestry of African-American folk music. Its imagery of a chariot coming down from heaven to carry the faithful home is a powerful metaphor for salvation and release. The song gained widespread popularity through recordings by various gospel groups, most notably the Golden Gate Quartet in the 1940s. Their intricate harmonies and rhythmic drive heavily influenced Elvis's approach. Elvis first recorded Swing Down, Sweet Chariot during the sessions for his Hand in Mine album in late October 1960 at RCA Studio B in Nashville. This version, featuring the Jordanaires, captures a lively quartet feel. It's energetic, rhythmic, and showcases Elvis's ability to handle the call and response patterns typical of this style. However, the version that truly cemented the song's place in the Elvis canon came nearly a decade later. It was recorded for the soundtrack of Elvis's 1969 film, The Trouble with Girls and How to Get Into It. The film was set in the 1920s Chautauqua circuit, and Elvis played the manager of the traveling show. This setting provided a perfect backdrop for incorporating authentic-sounding gospel music. The recording session for this updated version took place in October 1968 at United Western Resorters in Hollywood. This 1968 recording is arguably the definitive Elvis version. It's looser, funkier, and has an infectious energy that's impossible to resist. While the film itself wasn't one of Elvis's biggest hits, the musical performances were often highlights. For this track, Elvis was backed not by the Jordanaires, but by female vocal groups, the Blossoms, featuring the incredible Darlene Love and the Sweet Inspirations, who would become his regular live backup singers. Their powerful voices add a different dimension to the song, giving it a driving, soulful feel. The arrangement is fantastic, featuring a prominent rollicking piano part, likely played by the legendary session musician Larry Muhobrak, and a solid rhythm section. Elvis sounds like he's having an absolute blast singing it. His lead vocal is strong and commanding, but also playful. He trades lines with the background vocalists, building the energy throughout the track. It feels less like a formal studio recording and more like an impromptu, spirit-filled jam session captured on tape. This version of Swing Down, Sweet Chariot became a fan favorite and was later included on the compilation album Elvis Sings Flaming Star, originally released exclusively through Singer sewing machine stores, and subsequent gospel collections. It demonstrated Elvis's versatility within the gospel genre, showing he could deliver heartfelt ballads like Take My Hand, Precious Lord, but also lead a powerhouse up-tempo spiritual that made you want to get up and dance. It's a pure celebration in song, reflecting the uplifting spirit that drew Elvis to gospel music in the first place. The sheer joy in his voice is palpable, a testament to his genuine love for this style of music. Number 5, Crying in the Chapel. This one's a bit unusual because Crying in the Chapel wasn't originally written as a gospel song, and Elvis's recording sat on a shelf for years before becoming a surprise smash hit. The song was written by Artie Glenn for his son, Darrell Glenn, who first recorded it in 1953. Darrell's version was a country pop ballad telling the story of finding peace and renewed faith after visiting a chapel. It was a moderate success, but the song truly found its audience through numerous cover versions in different genres. R&B group The Orioles had a huge hit with their doo-wop arrangement, later in 1953, taking it to number 1 on the R&B charts and number 11 on the pop charts. Several other artists, including Rex Allen and June Valley, also recorded versions around the same time. It was clearly a song with broad appeal, touching on themes of faith, solace, and finding peace in a spiritual setting, even if it wasn't strictly a traditional hymn. Elvis Presley decided to tackle the song during the same productive sessions that yielded his first full gospel album, His Hand in Mine. On October 31st, 1960, deep into the night at RCA Studio B in Nashville, after laying down tracks like Take My Hand, Precious Lord, and Swing Down, Sweet Chariot, Elvis turned his attention to Crying in the Chapel. He was backed by his core studio band of the era, Scotty Moore, guitar, Bob Moore, bass, DJ Fontana, and Buddy Harmon, drums, Floyd Kramer, piano, guitarist Hank Garland, and of course, the smooth harmonies of the Jordanaires, featuring Gordon Stoker's prominent tenor. Elvis reportedly loved the song and felt a connection to its message. He delivered a sincere, heartfelt vocal performance, imbued with a gentle reverence that transformed the country pop tune into something that felt undeniably spiritual. The arrangement was simple and elegant, with Kramer's piano providing a guiding melody and the Jordanaires' voices creating an almost ethereal backdrop. Despite the quality of the recording and Elvis's enthusiasm for it, RCA Records and Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, decided not to release it at the time. They felt it didn't quite fit with the other tracks on the His Hand in Mine album, perhaps because of its more secular origins. They also may have worried it sounded too similar stylistically to some of Elvis's earlier pop hits like Are You Lonesome Tonight? And wanted to keep the gospel album distinct. So the recording was shelved, put away in the RCA vaults. Fast forward nearly 5 years. By early 1965, Elvis's musical output was heavily focused on movie soundtracks of varying quality, and his chart dominance wasn't quite what it had been in the 50s and early 60s. RCA was looking for a strong single release. Someone rediscovered the unreleased recording of Crying in the Chapel from the 1960 sessions. Believing it had potential, RCA decided to finally release it as a single in April 1965. The timing was perfect. The song struck a chord with audiences worldwide. It sounded fresh yet timeless. Elvis's earnest vocal, combined with the song's universal themes of finding comfort in faith, resonated deeply. Crying in the Chapel became a massive international hit. It shot up the charts, reaching number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US and incredibly hitting number 1 on the UK IMLA's chart, where it stayed for 2 weeks. It also topped the Billboard Easy Listening chart for 7 weeks. It was Elvis's biggest hit single in several years and proved his enduring appeal. It also highlighted, perhaps unintentionally, the deep connection audiences felt with Elvis's more spiritual and heartfelt recordings. Even though it wasn't a traditional gospel song, his performance gave it that weight and sincerity. The success of Crying in the Chapel undoubtedly paved the way for Elvis to record more gospel music later in the decade, including the Grammy-winning How Great Thou Art album. It was a forgotten gem that found its moment becoming one of Elvis's most beloved and enduring recordings, bridging the gap between his pop stardom and his deep love for spiritual music. Number 4. Peace in the Valley. There'll be peace in the valley. For Maine holds a special place in Elvis history, primarily because it marked one of the very first times he performed gospel music for a massive national television audience, revealing a side of himself beyond the rebellious rock and roller. The song was another classic, written by the prolific Thomas A. Dorsey, the same composer behind Take My Hand, Precious Lord. Dorsey wrote Peace in the Valley in 1937, reportedly inspired by seeing smoke-belching factories while traveling by train through a valley, prompting him to long for a place of peace and tranquility. It was first made famous by country music legend Red Foley, whose 1951 recording became the first gospel song to sell over 1 million copies. Elvis, growing up immersed in gospel and country music, was certainly familiar with Foley's hit version and the song's status as a standard. He loved the song's message of hope and eternal peace. The moment that etched Elvis's version into public consciousness came during his third and final appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on January 6, 1957. These appearances were monumental television events, watched by tens of millions of Americans. Elvis was already a controversial figure, famous for his dynamic stage presence and perceived rebellious attitude. For this final appearance, Sullivan, perhaps wanting to showcase a different side of the young star, or perhaps responding to pressure from critics, allowed Elvis significant control over his song choices. Against the advice of his record label and management, who wanted him to stick to his rock and roll hits, Elvis insisted on closing his set with Peace in the Valley. He reportedly told Sullivan and the producers that he wanted to sing a song for his mother Gladys, who loved gospel music. Performing live from CB's Television Studio 50 in New York City, Elvis, dressed sharply, stood relatively still compared to his usual energetic performances. He was backed by the Jordanaires, providing their essential harmonies. He introduced the song simply and sang it with straightforward sincerity and deep feeling. Gone was the swagger. In its place was a palpable reverence for the music and its message. His voice, clear and strong, conveyed the song's longing for a place free from earthly troubles. The performance was a revelation for many viewers. It showed a more sensitive spiritual dimension to the king of rock and roll. While the cameras famously filmed him only from the waist up during this appearance, a concession to critics of his swiveling hips, his vocal performance needed no visual enhancement. It was pure, heartfelt, and deeply moving. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Thousands of letters poured into CBS and RCA Records, praising Elvis for singing the gospel song. Buoyed by the incredible public reaction, RCA quickly rushed Elvis into the studio to record Peace in the Valley. The recording session took place just a week later, on January 13, 1957, at Radio Resorters in Hollywood. Elvis was backed by his usual band, Scotty Moore, guitar, Bill Black, bass, DJ Fontana, drums, plus Dudley Brooks on piano and the Jordanaires. They captured the same spirit as the Sullivan performance, earnest, respectful, and beautifully sung. RCA released the song not as a standard single, but as the title track of an extended play, EP, record titled Peace in the Valley in April 1957. The EP also included 3 other gospel songs recorded around the same time. It is no secret what God can do, I Believe, and Take My Hand, Precious Lord, an earlier, different recording than the 1960 version. The Peace in the Valley EP was a phenomenal success. It shot to number 3 on the Billboard EP chart and remarkably even made the top 40 of the main singles chart, peaking at pound 39, later recharting and reaching pound 25, despite not being a single. More significantly, it became the first EP in recording history to sell over 1 million copies, earning Elvis another gold record. This success demonstrated the huge, largely untapped market for Elvis's gospel recordings. It confirmed his deep connection to this music wasn't just personal, but resonated powerfully with his audience. Peace in the Valley became a cornerstone of his gospel repertoire and a reminder of that landmark Ed Sullivan performance where Elvis Presley shared his faith with the world. Number 3. He Touched Me. This powerful song not only became the title track of Elvis's 3rd and final gospel album during his lifetime, but it also earned him his 2nd Grammy Award. He Touched Me was written by William J. Gaither in 1963. Bill Gaither, along with his wife Gloria, would become one of the most influential and prolific songwriting teams in contemporary Christian and Southern gospel music. The story goes that Bill was accompanying his friend and fellow gospel singer Doug Oldham, who was feeling discouraged about his ministry. As they talked, Gaither was inspired by the simple, profound idea of the draughting power of Christ's touch, and the lyrics and melody began to form. The song quickly gained popularity within the gospel music community. It was recorded by various artists, including the Bill Gaither Trio themselves and the Imperials, a prominent gospel quartet who would later work extensively with Elvis. Elvis became aware of the song through the Imperials. He deeply admired their sound and the energy they brought to gospel music. By the early 1970s, the Imperials, led by Jake Hess, a founding member of the Statesman Quartet, another group Elvis idolized, were frequently opening Elvis's concerts and sometimes providing backing vocals. Elvis decided to record He Touched Me during sessions held at RCA Studio B in Nashville in May 1971. These sessions were specifically dedicated to recording a new gospel album, his first since 1967's How Great Thou Art. Elvis was in fine voice, and the atmosphere in the studio was reportedly focused and inspired. He was surrounded by top Nashville session musicians, including James Burton on lead guitar, Charlie Hodge on acoustic guitar and harmony vocals, Jerry Carrigan on drums, Norbert Putnam on bass, and David Briggs on piano. Crucially, backing vocals for this session were provided by the Imperials. Elvis's version of He Touched Me is a masterful blend of reverence and power. It starts gently with Elvis's voice, conveying vulnerability and awe as he sings about being lost before experiencing a spiritual awakening. The arrangement gradually builds, reflecting the growing conviction and joy in the lyrics. The Imperials provide soaring, intricate harmonies that lift the song to incredible heights, perfectly complementing Elvis's passionate lead vocal. There's a palpable sense of testimony in his delivery. He sings it like he truly means every word. The track culminates in a powerful, uplifting crescendo that leaves the listener stirred. The song became the title track for the album, He Touched Me, released in April 1972. The album itself was a strong collection of contemporary gospel songs alongside more traditional hymns, shouting Elvis's continued commitment to the genre. It included other notable tracks like Amazing Grace, Bosom of Abraham, and An Evening Prayer. The album was well received by critics and fans alike, appreciated for its modern sound while retaining its spiritual depth. The industry recognition came the following year. At the 15th Annual Grammy Awards held in March 1973, Elvis Presley won the award for Best Inspirational Performance, Non-Classical, for the album He Touched Me. This marked his second Grammy win. And, like his first, it was for his gospel music. The award solidified his status as a respected artist within the inspirational music field, separate from his rock and roll persona. He Touched Me remained a significant song for Elvis. Its message of redemption and transformation clearly resonated with him personally. The recording stands as a prime example of Elvis, in the 1970s, applying his powerful voice and interpretive skills to contemporary gospel material, creating a sound that was both deeply spiritual and musically compelling. It's a testament to the enduring power of faith expressed through song, delivered by one of music's most iconic voices and rightfully recognized with music's highest honor. Number 2. How Great Thou Art. This is it, the big one. The song that earned Elvis Presley his very first competitive Grammy Award. How Great Thou Art is more than just a song. It's a majestic, soaring hymn of praise that has become one of the most beloved sacred songs in the world, and Elvis's definitive version cemented its place in popular culture. The hymn's origins are fascinating and international. It began as a Swedish poem titled "O Stor Good," written by Carl Boberg in 1885. Inspired by the beauty and power of nature he witnessed after a sudden storm. The poem was later set to a traditional Swedish folk melody. The hymn journeyed across Europe, being translated into German and then Russian. It was English missionary Stuart K. Hine who encountered the Russian version in Ukraine in the 1930s. Inspired by the original Swedish text and his own experiences of God's majesty in the Carpathian Mountains, Hine translated it into English, adding his own verses reflecting on the life and sacrifice of Christ and his second coming. He published his English version, How Great Thou Art, in 1949. The hymn gained popularity, particularly through the Billy Graham Crusades, starting in the mid-1950s, where it was frequently sung by soloist George Beverly Shea. This exposure brought it to a massive audience in America. Elvis Presley, with his deep roots in church music, would have undoubtedly heard the hymn growing up and certainly knew it from the popular recordings by artists like Shea and the Statesman Quartet, one of his favorite gospel groups. He reportedly loved the song's grandeur and powerful message of awe and adoration. Elvis decided to record How Great Thou Art for his second gospel album, which would ultimately bear the hymn's name. The recording session took place at RCA Studio B in Nashville on May 25, 1966. This was a dedicated gospel session, and Elvis approached it with seriousness and passion. He was backed by an exceptional group of musicians, including guitarist Scotty Moore, though Chip Young played lead guitar on this specific track, bassist Bob Moore, drummer DJ Fontana, pianist Floyd Kramer, and Hargus Pig Robbins on organ. Providing the crucial, soaring background vocals were both the Jordanaires and the Imperials, augmented by Millie Kirkham, creating a rich, full choral sound. The recording process for How Great Thou Art was meticulous. Elvis and the musicians worked late into the night determined to capture the hymn's majesty. They recorded 4 takes, with the final take being selected as the master. Elvis's performance is simply stunning. He begins with a sense of quiet reverence, his voice filled with wonder as he sings of nature's beauty. As the hymn progresses, his voice builds in intensity and power, reflecting the increasing awe expressed in the lyrics. The arrangement perfectly complements his vocal, starting simply and swelling with organ, piano, and the powerful choir of voices. The final verse, contemplating Christ's sacrifice and return, is delivered with breathtaking power and conviction. Elvis hits the high notes with clarity and strength, holding the final note in a way that sends shivers down the spine. It's a tour de force vocal performance, widely regarded as one of the finest of his entire career in any genre. The album How Great Thou Art was released in February 1967. It was a triumph, critically acclaimed and commercially successful, reaching number 18 on the Billboard Pop Album chart, an impressive feat for a gospel record. The title track immediately stood out as the centerpiece. The music industry took notice. At the 10th annual Grammy Awards held in 1968, Elvis Presley won the award for Best Sacred Performance for his recording of How Great Thou Art. This was a hugely significant moment. While he had received honorary awards, this was his first competitive Grammy win, awarded not for the rock and roll that made him famous, but for the gospel music that was closest to his heart. Elvis often performed How Great Thou Art in concert during the later years of his career, particularly in the 1970s. It became a showstopper, a moment where he could showcase the incredible power and range of his voice and share his faith with his audience. Live performances, such as the one captured in the 1972 documentary Elvis on Tour, which also won a Golden Globe Award, were often deeply emotional experiences for both Elvis and the audience. He would reprise the powerful ending multiple times, drawing out the intensity and receiving thunderous ovations. His recording of How Great Thou Art not only earned him his first Grammy, but also became the definitive version for millions around the world. It transcended genre, touching listeners from all walks of life with its message of faith and awe-inspiring vocal delivery. It remains a towering achievement in his recorded legacy. Number 1. Amazing Grace. Perhaps no hymn is more universally recognized or beloved than Amazing Grace, and hearing Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, lend his voice to this timeless message of redemption is a truly powerful experience. The hymn's story is as remarkable as its enduring appeal. The lyrics were written by English poet and Anglican clergyman John Newton, likely around 1772, and published in 1779 as part of the Only Hymns collection. He collaborated on with poet William Cowper. Newton's life, before his conversion, was anything but saintly. He was involved in the Atlantic slave trade for several years. However, after a terrifying storm at sea in 1748, he experienced a spiritual awakening that began a gradual transformation. He eventually renounced slave trading, became a prominent abolitionist, and dedicated his life to Christian ministry. Amazing Grace is widely interpreted as reflecting Newton's personal journey from a self-described wretch involved in abhorrent practices to someone who found profound redemption through God's grace. The line, "Was blind, but now I see," carries immense personal weight from his perspective. The lyrics were later set most famously to the tune New Britain, a common melody of unknown origin that first appeared, paired with Newton's words and William Walker's shape note, hymnal, Southern Harmony in 1835. This pairing solidified the hymn into the form we know today, and it became an integral part of religious services, folk traditions, and social movements across America and the world. Elvis Presley, having grown up singing hymns in the Assembly of God Church, knew Amazing Grace intimately. It was part of the bedrock of his musical and spiritual foundation. Surprisingly, despite his deep love for gospel, he didn't officially record the hymn until relatively late in his career. The recording session took place on March 15, 1971, at RCA Studio B in Nashville. This was during a period where Elvis was seriously reinvesting in his music, moving beyond the often lackluster movie soundtracks and focusing on recording strong studio material, including what would become the He Touched Me gospel album. The atmosphere during these March 1971 sessions was productive. Elvis was joined by his stellar band, including James Burton, lead guitar, Chip Young, rhythm guitar, Charlie Hodge, acoustic guitar harmony vocals, Norbert Putnam, bass, Jerry Carrigan, drums, and David Briggs, piano organ. Backing vocals were provided by the Imperials, whose gospel harmonies were a perfect match for the material. Elvis approached Amazing Grace with a quiet intensity and deep respect. His rendition is heartfelt and soulful, avoiding excessive embellishment. He lets the simple beauty of the melody and the profound weight of Newton's lyrics speak for themselves. His voice, rich and mature, conveys a sense of weary understanding and humble gratitude. You can hear the life experience in his delivery, the triumphs, the struggles, the enduring search for peace. The arrangement is relatively straightforward, but effective. Acoustic guitar provides a gentle rhythm, while piano and organ add subtle color. The Imperials' harmonies swell beautifully behind Elvis, particularly on the chorus, adding a layer of warmth and spiritual uplift without overpowering his lead vocal. It's a performance marked by sincerity rather than showmanship. It feels personal, like a prayer sung aloud. The recording was included on the He Touched Me album, released in April 1972. While not released as a single, Elvis's version quickly became a fan favorite and a staple on gospel radio stations. It stands as one of the most beloved tracks on an album that, as mentioned earlier, earned Elvis his second Grammy Award for Best Inspirational Performance. Elvis also performed Amazing Grace live in concert occasionally during the 1970s. Often performed as part of a gospel medley or as a reflective moment in the show, it allowed him to connect with the audience on a deeper, more spiritual level. These live versions often carried an even greater emotional weight, sung directly from his heart to the thousands gathered before him. Hearing Elvis Presley sing Amazing Grace is a reminder of the core of his musical identity. Beyond the gold lame suits and the electrifying stage moves, there was a man deeply connected to the spiritual music of his youth. His version doesn't seek to reinvent the hymn. Instead, it offers a humble, powerful testimony from one of the world's most famous voices, sharing a timeless message of hope and redemption that resonated with his own life story and continues to touch listeners today. It's a fitting pinnacle, a universally loved hymn, sung by a universally loved icon, grounded in the faith that sustained him throughout his extraordinary life.